Who is Interpol, and why are they so upset at these security lapses?
It's an international organization for police cooperation, and they're a venue for sharing data about police investigations. The reason they're upset is that they maintain a database of lost and stolen passports, among other things, and the Malaysian authorities or the airline authorities evidently did not check the manifest of this flight against that database.
Do we do that at JFK?
We do.
Why don't they do that around the world? I have been through, I don't want to disparage any airports, but I've been through major international airports where I go, you're kidding me.
Yeah.
There's a gap here, isn't there?
And in retrospect, there's no explanation for it that will satisfy anyone. I mean, it's just a failure on the part of them. If that's what happened, if it wasn't some sort of computer glitch, it was a failure on the part of the carrier and the airport authority at KL.
We keep coming back to this idea that foul play can't be ruled out. Tell us a little bit about Malaysia, because the majority of Malaysia is Muslim, and we know the country hasn't seen any recent major terrorist attacks on its soil, but it has been used as a transit hub and a planning hub, right?
Yes, all true. I mean, in fact, it featured in the 9/11 plot now quite some time ago, but it was one of the places where the plotters got together before coming to attack the United States. It has some domestic internal problems, but mainly it's a transit state. It's a facilitation hub. It's in a very strategic location.
Richard Haass, a question, please, for Dr. Falkenrath.
Is it your sense that since 9/11, that for terrorists, airplanes and airlines, by and large, are not the most vulnerable area? Does this surprise you?
So they're certainly not as vulnerable as they were pre-9/11. What is interesting and what surprised me is they continue to go after them. So despite an extraordinary global effort and U.S. effort to protect international air travel systems, these continue to be targeted. We also see innovation in bomb-making techniques, particularly out of the Arabian Peninsula. So our bomb detection technology had really focused on finding metal on a person or in a checked bag. Now it's shifted to liquids, which are not detectable by metal. It is, for instance, the reason why you no longer can bring a soda or a liquid onto an aircraft. It's because we know of a bomb-making recipe that only involves liquids, no metallic parts.
Richard, connect the dots for us with China, because it suffered a terrorist attack, so it says, last week by a Muslim ethnic group, the Uyghurs. Is there a link here between what we've seen in Malaysia, what we could see in China, and this idea that terrorism plays a role?
Have you seen that written anywhere? That linkage there?
Well,
there's been suggestions.
33 people killed by machete-wielding people in a remote...
I think it's safe to say at the moment there's no evidence of that whatsoever, that this is at all connected to the Uyghur separatists in China. There have been Uyghur attacks in mainland China. This is not their M.O. And so what you've got here is it's not uncommon with cases like this in the early stages. It's thousands of dots, and what connects them is the stuff of the investigation, and that will emerge over the coming days, I have no doubt.
And while our conversation is certainly leaning towards some sort of foul play, we still don't know exactly what happened. It could have been a mechanical issue. Richard, and again, you were the deputy in charge of security here for the police department. You advised the White House. You're not an FAA inspector, but when an airliner goes down over the ocean, you're trying to get a black box. I mean, can you really get data out of there that is going to be able to help solve what happened?
Yeah, once you get the black box, you'll be able to tell pretty precisely what it is. Because of the telemetry that it records about all the different systems, they'll be able to reconstruct, work backwards to the type of failure.
Like the Air France flight.
Yeah, like the Air France flight. It took 2 years to get that black box. The hard part here is about the investigation on the ground in KL. And it's not just the passenger manifest that's going to be looked at. It's also the crew behind the wall. So one possibility is the passenger brought a bomb aboard. Another is that it was checked in and there was no human being associated. The third is that the ground crew placed it on the vessel if it's a bomb. All those possibilities need to be resolved.
Ambassador Haass, your Council on Foreign Relations has been looking at international relations, I'm going to say back to World War II, if not earlier, and there's this whole backdrop of terrorism. How have you treated it within your research?
Well, I would say, it's part of the superstructure now of international relations, but as Rich Falkenrath was pointing out, it has qualitatively changed over the last 10 or 20 years in terms of its capabilities, its globalization, if you will, on the dark side. And now you have forms of training, recruiting, money's moving, people are moving. So it's become much more of an international phenomenon, and in some ways, I think, much more dangerous than one other thing, Tom. It's also what motivates terrorists have changed. In the old days, we used to have like Basque terrorists, terrorists or IRA terrorists, much more narrow. Now you've got much bigger terrorism, global mechanisms with much bigger ambitions.
I was going to compare there to the killing of Anwar Sadat in Egypt, which was a whole different. Actually, of course, then when there's no reports yet linking this crash to terror.